Hello, everyone. I'm Aydoğan Vatandaş, the editor-in-chief of Politurco.com. Today, I have a very special, remarkable guest, Professor Anne Speckhard. And thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. I'm happy to be with you.
And before I start my questions, I just want to give some brief information about you. Dr. Speckhard is founder and director of the International Center for the Study of Violent Extremism, adjunct associate professor of psychiatry at Georgetown University School of Medicine, media expert, and seasoned public speaker. She has consulted with the U.S. State Department, Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Justice, FBI, European Commission, Balkan and EU governments, Interpol, Europol, OSCE, UN Women, UN Office on Drugs and Crime, among others. And today, I want to talk about your most recent book, Homegrown Hate Inside the Minds of Domestic Violent Extremists.
I have it right here on my desk.
Yes. Excellent. So could you please tell us who these domestic violent extremists are? What was your motivation to focus on these particular people in the United States? I know that you were focusing on Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and jihadi movements. So what changed in the United States? Why you just changed your focus to homegrown violent extremists?
Well, there were a number of things. First of all, we still focus on ISIS and Al-Shabaab and Al-Qaeda, and that has been our main focus since the inception of our center, and I've been studying that for 20 years. But we were always asked, why aren't you studying these white supremacists and anti-government militias at home? And my answer always was, we don't have the bandwidth. But right before January 6th, just by coincidence, we did hire a few extra people, and we decided, okay, let's expand our focus. And I started interviewing white supremacist leaders and members. And we, at the same time, were monitoring channels where people were talking about the election being stolen and the call to come to Washington for January 6th. So we started just by coincidence, maybe 4 months before January 6th. So we were thick into it, and we had a model already because I'm a psychologist, and all of my research interviews go deep into a person's life. So I start with, where were you born? Tell me about your parents. Tell me about your upbringing. And go all the way to, how did you get recruited? What were your experiences in this group? Did you ever get disillusioned? Are you still gung-ho? All that kind of thing. And with ISIS, we had a State Department grant where we had agreed that for the first time ever, I filmed my interviews. And I was very nervous about filming interviews, but we ended up getting 273 ISIS interviews. And when I filmed them, I asked the people at the end. And when I was doing the ISIS interviews, it was in the heyday of ISIS. ISIS was still in Raqqa, still in charge. And I would ask people that were in prison or had returned from ISIS to Turkey, to Balkans, wherever, would you please consider, since you're disillusioned of this group, to give advice to others that are sitting behind a keyboard? Because nowadays, most recruitment happens, at least in part, if not in full, over the internet. And a lot of them agreed. So we started making counter-narrative videos. So these are about 5-minute videos where we cut a 2-hour interview. And the main highlights of this 5-minute video are, what was your grievance? So that a person would want to watch it, like ISIS. What did you think ISIS was going to deliver you? What was your vision of ISIS, your ISIS dream? What were your experiences? And did you become disillusioned? And now can you tell others, is it a good idea to join? So we had created this project called Breaking the ISIS Brand. So we transferred all of that knowledge and know-how over to the white supremacists, and we called it Escape Hate. So we did the same thing, and most people agreed to be in a counter-narrative video. So we have about 40 videos. With ISIS, we have 250 short video clips.
Right.
And Facebook has partnered with us. So we were doing research, but we call ourselves an action-based research center. All of our research, we try to translate into real-world products to immediately use to fight terrorism. So every interview we took, we immediately made a counter-narrative video. And we're still catching up on that because we couldn't go as fast as the interviews came in to create the counter-narrative videos. But if you read the book, almost every chapter has a story of a real person, and then it has a link to their video. So it's a multimedia book, actually.
Right. And how did you convince them? So you interviewed 15 violent extremists in the United States.
51.
51. Okay. So how did you convince these people and how did you find them? Was that difficult to reach them out? So how did you find them? How did you convince them to talk to you? How did they trust you?
That's a lot of questions. So first of all, our sample was from 7 different countries. So they were from the UK, Germany, New Zealand, Canada, US, and I lose the other countries. Maybe it was 5, I'm not sure. But anyway, I tried to go through links. So one of the people that I interviewed early on was Jeff Shoup. And Jeff used to run the National Socialist Movement. So he introduced me to a lot of people that used to work for him. And that was very kind. So I think his introduction helped. And a lot of times these people want to talk about themselves, as long as they don't think it will get them into any trouble. They're trying to sort their way too. And I'm a pretty nice psychologist. So what I find, at least at the end of the interview, people will say, wow, I never spent 2 hours with somebody that helped me pull all the pieces of my life together and look at it. And so it's a gift to them as well. And it's not therapy, but it is therapeutic. So they often would recommend people into the sample as well. And I also went looking for people on social media and got turned down. The cold calls are harder. Let me see. And also TM Garrett is on our staff, and he's a former KKK. So TM reached out to people and told them, Anne's solid, you can trust her. So the introductions helped a lot. There was one other guy that also helped, Ed, helped us. And so, that's how we did it. And I was kind of amazed as well that we ended up with 51. Both projects continue. So the ISIS interviews continue and the white supremacist anti-government militia interviews continue. But now that so many people got prosecuted for January 6th, a lot of people are scared to talk.
Right.
So it's gotten a lot harder.
So when you interviewed these people, did you have a picture of what these people want? I mean, what was their motivation? What do they want? For example, when it comes to ISIS or Al-Qaeda, we can say that they want a caliphate or resurrect the caliphate, or they just want to wants the Islam to dominate the world. We know their ideology. When it comes to white supremacists, what do they want? I mean, what do they believe?
Well, white supremacists want a white ethno-state. So they want to live separately from other races. Generally, all the ideologies boil down to that Jews are running the world and that Jews are a malign influence in the world. So and Jews want bad for white people, so they're helping minorities. And the sad thing is, the best lie has some truth in it. And a lot of Jewish organizations do help minorities, which is a good thing, right? So they want Jews not to be in control of the world. Not that they are anyway, but that's their belief. They want minorities to serve them and to live apart from them. They want to be safe. So they believe that they're going to create a white ethno-state where they will thrive and be safe. And we have to keep in mind that a lot of people that white supremacists appeals to are people that are middle class and falling. So they're struggling in their lives. The economy has changed. A lot of things have changed. They grew up in chaotic and abusive homes, and they don't have a vision for living together and for thriving in society as it exists now. Some are accelerationists, and accelerationists just want to destroy the whole system and rebuild. If they're white supremacists, the rebuilding is whites in charge. They believe they're superior. And anti-government militias are something else. Anti-government militias, they oftentimes have white supremacists as part of their it might not be part of their ideology, but they belong and they attract white supremacists. And anti-government militias are really into gun rights. Trump really appealed to them with Stop the Steal. So, they would engage in violence, and they oftentimes threaten. So, like Oath Keepers had a list of things that they absolutely refuse to comply to. They think the federal government is too big and is trying to control them in malign ways.
On January 6th, we saw evangelical Christians and also white supremacists. So, for example, the people that you interviewed, can you please tell us how many of them were linked to evangelicals and how many of them were linked to white supremacists? And I really want to learn the beliefs of white supremacists. I mean, are they close to the Christianity, or they already distance themselves from Christian values and beliefs?
Well, it's not that they've distanced themselves, they've twisted Christian beliefs. So KKK follows something, and KKK still exists. It was broken apart by laws, but KKK believes in something called Christian identity. So Christian identity says that white people are the true human beings, and that in the garden, Adam and Eve had a literal liaison with the serpent, with Satan, and that those children are the Black people and the Jews. And another version of Christian identity says that Black people and minorities were animals, and that whites were told, as most Christians believe, not about whites, but that man was given dominion over the animals. So whites were given dominion over minorities, and that they should treat them basically as slaves, and they should be served service animals. And so that's a twisting of Christianity. And many groups follow Christian identity. Other groups follow Odinism, which is a Norse pagan belief, and they believe in Norse gods, and they believe that whites are superior. But one thing we have to keep in mind in the US and also in Western nations is that we are seeing mainstreaming of a lot of these ideas. And part of this happened by QAnon. QAnon got really strong during Trump's last, when he was in office. And QAnon tried to scare people, telling them that liberals were predators and moving children around. So we had things like Pizzagate, and that they were eating the adrenochrome of children. Adrenochrome doesn't give you long life, but in the conspiracy theory, it does. And that Hillary Clinton and the rest were these evil, horrible people, and that there would be a day of reckoning. And in the QAnon ideology, the day of reckoning comes when Donald Trump takes power. And that's why the whole thing with January 6th was very appealing for anybody that believed in QAnon. So a white supremacist would follow QAnon. A Christian might follow QAnon. But Christians would probably also be looking at it through the lens of Christianity, that perhaps there's going to be an antichrist. This is all in the end times ideology. and that there's going to be a fight between good and evil, and that they need to be on the side of good. But Christian nationalism is something that we have to watch carefully because it can be dangerous. So these kind of things, and then this whole conspiracy theory about the Stop the Steal appeal.
Do they also believe that the American government is under the control of the aliens? Did you see any conspiracy theories like that?
Oh, that's a good one. You actually asked me some of this. We were corresponding, and you know a lot more about it than I do.
Yes.
And I just recently got introduced to the Rumpf School of Enlightenment, and that's out in the Northwest. And some of the beliefs that were coming down about that aliens were inside of human bodies, but they were really lizards on the inside. And yeah, that was mentioned by a number of people, that they, for a time period, believed that there were aliens among us that were disguised, and that they had a desire to harm us.
Right.
So these kind of things can be used to scare people and mobilize them into things they might not normally do.
Right. And my last question, do you think that FBI and other law enforcement agencies are taking this threat seriously?
I think the FBI is, and they have been for years. So I don't want to give you the impression that we just suddenly decided this was important. I thought this was important 8 years ago. The FBI has been warning about it for years and saying that this is a growing threat. And now that it is a threat that has exceeded the threat from ISIS and Al Qaeda. So yes, absolutely. The FBI is on top of it, and they've got informants. They've, tried to follow a lot of these groups and see what they're up to and stop them when they're about to commit violent crimes. So, for instance, we have Benji McDowell in the book, and Benji's story revolves around going to buy a rifle that he's going to use to shoot up a synagogue, and he believes he's going to be a hero for the white race, but he goes to his KKK wizard, and luckily the guy is working with the FBI. So Benji doesn't get his rifle in the 1,000 other places he could have bought one. He buys it from the FBI, and he's stopped. He's arrested. And so, yeah, FBI is on top of things. What I see is that our politicians are not on top of it. And not only that, but our politicians are mainstreaming some of this. We've got non-believers. I mean, we've had Trump repeat all kinds of QAnon things recently on his Truth Social. So politicians are not taking it seriously, or even more scary, they're trying to mobilize these people to vote for them. So they're pandering to them.
And thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your work, your study. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.